Hello there, everybody. This is Jesse Gillenwalters with IndiePRO and this video is part of our Hot Seat initiative. So to those uninitiated, first of all, IndiePRO is a marketing, community, agency, coaching organization that helps independent musicians market their music on their terms, on their budget, and owning kind of all of their own assets along the way. And IndiePRO within IndiePRO is our kind of community aspect of the company. And as a part of that IndiePRO community, everyone in there has the ability to ask a team member a question, specific questions that we answer with video replies, thorough answers, and that is what our hot seat program is. And I am in the hot seat today, meaning I am looking at those answers and I'm looking at those questions and I'm providing an answer. And today I got a great question from an esteemed independent musician that I've worked with personally extensively named EnYoung. So glad to see you back here, Ian. And I love this question, for which I have a clear answer for you. So let me read off Ian's question here. He says, "Hey, y'all, can you throw some insight at me, please? Should I run a Facebook ad for a show for a lower amount but longer time, such as $444 a day, or should I wait till a few weeks before the show with a bigger daily spend, something like 10 plus a day?" And this is a great question that applies to a lot of campaigns. So I think kind of what I say here, you'll be able to use in other contexts as well. So basically what Ian's asking here is like, let's say I have a budget of $100. Is it better to spend it closer to the show, like $10 a day for 10 days? Or should I spread it out more, like $250 a day for, how many days would that be? I don't know how many days that would be. I'm going to figure that out real quick. 250, so 100 divided by 250, 40 days. That's what I wanted to say, but it sounds kind of crazy. 40 days, $2.50 a day. What would be better? About over a month of promotion time or less promotion time and a higher budget? Now, the first thing I would mention there is that as a rule of thumb, a higher budget on a daily basis is going to perform better, right? And when I say perform better, I just mean purely on the concept of the ad providing you better results from the context of like the ad generating the results you want. On a technical level, like if your ad has a higher budget attached to it on a daily basis, it will have a better chance of beating out other ads that have lower budgets. And I won't get into this kind of in a nerdy manner, but basically the Facebook, the Meta Business Manager as platform, it operates on an auction. And so everyone that's advertising, they're aiming at audiences, and sometimes the same advertiser is aiming at the same audience, unbeknownst to them. And if one advertiser has a higher daily budget, they will gain precedence in delivering, their ads to that audience that maybe if I'm also aiming for that audience at a lower budget, they're going to win out and they're going to get kind of more preference with that audience just because they're beating out other advertisers budget-wise. So there's that piece, right? On a daily budget, you gain that advantage. But that does not mean necessarily that your show will sell out because you are kind of scrunching up your runtime and putting a higher budget, right? It may be the case that a higher budget gives you maybe, lower cost per click or lower cost per event response or something. But that's not all that's happening, right? Like consider the budget more of a tool. It's not the end all be all. It's not what will make your campaign necessarily work for you versus a lower budget at a different schedule. Because there's other things at play, right? Like there's, especially with a show, right? With a show, in a tour campaign or a show campaign in particular, where there's a deadline and a date and a thing happening, and it involves people reorienting their lives to afford, going to that event. There's more at play than just running that ad until like the cost per whatever is great, right? So there's tenure that of the campaign that kind of is relevant, right? Like if I need people to come to a show, I need them to know I got to take off work. I got to ask people to come with me. I got to maybe set some money aside. I got to think about getting a ride. Like suddenly there's plans they need to make. And a lot of people don't operate that way. A lot of people are more spur of the moment and don't need that, right? But there's that piece, right? Of like, I kind of, with that in mind, right? It's like, it kind of does benefit the concept of maybe I do want a longer run time, because I want to put this on people's minds more earlier on, more than I need to bum rush them with ticketing ads the week of, right? Or something. So there's that piece. The other thing with shows that I find, in particular show campaigns, is that, brand recall is kind of relevant, right? Like it's one thing to hit them with this messaging for the sake of convenience to them, right? Like make sure you're tracking this, put this on your calendar kind of thing. But I also think hitting them with multiple creative types, different videos, different photos for a while has a legitimate effect with the sake or for the sake of show campaigns. So I do find that giving yourself enough runtime to hit them with multiple different messages is helpful in this case. And so that's another kind of argument to make for maybe opting for longer runtime rather than a shorter burst of budget in this case. Yes, and there was another thing I wanted to mention I'm trying to think about that I can't remember. But this still kind of, everything I'm saying is more or less the core of what I meant to say here. So, I do remember. So the other thing, though, Ian, and this plays both toward and against what I'm saying, is I find over and over and over and over that you'll see most of your sales for, definitely if you're like not an artist that's going to sell out a venue, right? If you're an artist that's going to sell out a venue, that may happen well before the date is here, right? But if that's not going to happen, I typically see over and over tons and tons of your ticket sales will happen, your pre-sales will happen the day of, or maybe the 3 days before the show. Day of, day before that, you're going to see a lot of tickets come in. And what I typically see is that, in all of this time leading up to the show, I've been investing in kind of their interest and their attention and, their consideration. They might click over to the ticket page but not buy. It's kind of a hard thing to commit to always, You don't know if you'll be in the mood that night to go on the Thursday or whatever it is. So it's hard to be like, I'm definitely going to that if I'm like lukewarm on the artist. Like I would go to that if it kind of, if my life affords it. For that reason, a lot of people see it, they're like, maybe I'll do that. And then kind of as the week comes up, it looks more possible for them or something, or that they anticipate that they'll be ready for that. So I think that's kind of what psychologically tends to go on. And so I think what you're doing with these longer term campaigns is you're building a lot of that consideration and interest and, planning kind of in the minds of people, whether or not they're actually adding to cart even or purchasing. Maybe they're clicking over, maybe they're literally getting impressions, maybe they're responding to that event. And they kind of cash out on that repeated interest the day of, the days leading up when they actually decide to commit to the show. So all this to say, and so, does that kind of bolster the idea of like, well, let me save my budget for the end if people are going to kind of cash in then, it seems. I really think, everything what I'm saying here kind of rolls into, I think for shows, it is maybe preferable to invest in this longer term interest. Give people a sense of, the show is coming up. Start considering it, start thinking about it, start asking friends if they would go, things like that. That is a lot more a part of the purchase process for a show than a CD, right? They can swipe past a CD ad 12 times and then the 13th time for no good reason, they're like, all right, I'm just going to do it. Maybe it takes them one impression to impulsively do that, but they don't have to think about it and plan on it, as much as a show. So I would opt for a little bit more of a runtime. I like to give at least a month ahead of my shows to do some ads. And while you won't have as strong a budget on a daily basis, you'll have this time to have multiple creative types and multiple ways of reaching this audience, right? So you can have, while you won't be as competitive on the budget side, you can be competitive in terms of Week 1, I'm going to have this video. Week 2, I'm going to have that video. Week 3, I'm going to have this thing. And I think that will kind of be your advantage instead, you know. So my final answer, Ian, is I would opt for a bit of a longer runtime, so long as it's not like $1 a day. Like, I think as much as you can, you kind of want to hit the $5 a day sort of threshold for a meaningful budget. Meaning that, for example, 20 days of a $100 budget is pretty solid runtime, 20 days, right? 3 weeks or so. I would opt for that over a stronger budget closer to the show. So that is my answer. And it's ultimately up to you to look at your budget and kind of divide that up and figure out how to get, you know, do I do 20 days or 30 days or 40 days, and look at how that breaks up the budget. But as a rule of thumb, I would say aim for $5 daily on whatever you're doing, and let that guide your runtime. And kind of, you know, opt for $5 a day and about 30 days away from the show. That may not be perfect, right? You may have to go shorter or cheaper budget, but that would be my final answer. So I hope that helped everybody watching, specifically Ian. And I can't wait to see what you do with it. So see you around, and thank you for the question. Goodbye.